Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our press conference after today's dinner. Let me welcome here the Foreign Affairs Minister of the Czech Republic, Mr. Karel Schwarzenberg, Vice Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister of Israel, Tizpi Linvni, High Representative for CFSP, Mr. Javier Solana, and Commissioner for External Relations and European Neighbourhood Policy, Ms. Benita Ferrero-Waldner. I would now like to ask Minister Schwarzenberg for introductory remarks, please.
The foreign ministers of the European Union met with the foreign minister of Israel, Tizpi Linvni, today to discuss the situation in the Gaza Strip. The European Union has a commitment and the ability to react to a crisis situation. We all agree on the need to act swiftly and concretely. We deeply regret the loss of life during the conflict, notably the civilian casualties. We have been seeking reassurance that the ceasefire will be maintained, and we called on Israel to permit immediate and sustained access for the provision and distribution of humanitarian aid. We urge an immediate opening of all crossings as it was fixed in 2005, and to allow the international agencies to deliver and distribute sufficient volumes of humanitarian aid to meet the urgent needs of the civilian population of the Gaza Strip. The EU is also prepared to work toward rehabilitation and reconstruction, the sustainable economic recovery and future economic development of the Gaza Strip. During our dinner, we have discussed also how the EU can effectively contribute to prevent arms and ammunition smuggling to the Gaza Strip, and if the EU could help to liberate Copper Shalit. We will continue this discussion with other partners from the region on Sunday evening. We underlined our determination to continue to support the Palestinian Authority in developing the capacity and institutions of a viable Palestinian state. We stressed we would like to see the efforts on the wider Middle East process redoubled, a strong political process resulting in the creation of a viable Palestinian state alongside a secure Israel remains a core priority for the European Union. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Linvni, if you want to add something.
Microphone, please. The microphone.
A few weeks ago, Israel launched a military operation in Gaza Strip after 8 years in which Israeli civilians were under ongoing attacks from Gaza Strip on a daily basis by Hamas, a terrorist organization that controls Gaza Strip. During the operation, the goal was to change the equation after 8 years and in which Israel showed restraint after a truce that Israel accepted that was initiated by the Egyptians but was exploited by Hamas in order to smuggle weapons and to change the range of missiles. We decided to act in order to regain deterrence, and we decided to stop the military operation in a moment in which, according to our evaluation, we achieved our goals. Now this is being tested. We stopped the military operation. We are looking on the other side. And since one of the goals was to stop the attacks on Israel, if this stops, we have no need to continue the military operation. And it looks like it right now, but this is being tested. The other thing which is very problematic is, in fact, the way Hamas is continuing to transfer or to get weapons and to rearm their own military forces in Gaza Strip. During the truce that was initiated, as I said before, by the Egyptians, Hamas exploited the situation in order to get a weapon in a longer range. Before, until a few months ago, they could cover about 20 kilometers, and now it's about 50 kilometers. The meaning in terms of Israeli civilians is the change between 250,000 Israeli civilians up to about 1 million Israeli civilians. So it is clear that one of the goals of this operation, and this is a shared goal with the international community, is to stop the smuggling of weapons being delivered by Iran to Hamas in Gaza Strip. This is a mutual goal, since at the end of the day, the division in our region is between moderates and extremists, and on one hand you can have Israel and other moderate states and pragmatic leadership in the region, including the legitimate Palestinian government, and on the other you can have Hamas, Iran, Hezbollah, and other radical elements in the region. So the smuggling of weapons needs to be stopped. We are working with Egypt in order to do so. We are working with the United States in order to do so. We raised this issue with other member states of the EU, and today I raised it in our dinner. And the idea is to work together with Egypt and to work together in the routes of smuggling from Iran to Egypt in order to stop any attempts. Since according or the right of Israel to defend itself includes not only to defend itself from threats in terms of firing or missiles at Israel, but also in terms of smuggling of weapons. Israel left Gaza Strip a few years ago. The idea was to leave Gaza Strip and to create a vision of hope and peace. Unfortunately, Hamas captured Gaza Strip, and we still have our abducted soldier, Gilad Shalit, in captivity in Gaza Strip. So from our perspective, this is not completed. The idea, of course, is to act according to a dual strategy. On one hand, to work with the legitimate Palestinian government to create or to translate the idea of two states for two peoples into concrete peace treaty, but this can work with the pragmatic leadership of the Palestinians as long as all of us continues to delegitimize Hamas. The international community decided after Hamas won the elections that the only way to give legitimacy to Hamas is only if and when they accept the international requirements, including the right of Israel to exist, including renounce of violence and terrorism, and accepting former agreements between Israel and the Palestinians. So according to this dual strategy, we launched the peace process in Annapolis. We are determined to continue this peace process with the legitimate Palestinian government while delegitimizing and acting against Hamas as a terrorist organization. On the humanitarian issue that was discussed during dinner, Israel, the crossings are open for humanitarian needs. It's according to our values. We are working with the international community and international organization in order to help in answering the humanitarian needs in Gaza Strip, and this was also discussed during dinner, and we are willing to cooperate on this as far as needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. High Representative Solana.
Thank you very much. But as you know, the European Union has been engaged from the very beginning in trying to solve this conflict. A conflict which last manifestation has been the tragic events of the last weeks. We continue to do that. We will continue to do that. And as you know, tonight we have had this meeting with Minister Linvni. Tomorrow we'll continue working. The day after tomorrow we'll continue working. On Sunday we'll have the minister from Egypt, from the Palestinian Authority, from Jordan, from Turkey also having different meetings with us. So we are not going to stop. On Monday we will have a meeting of the European Union again to evaluate this number of meetings that are going to take place in these days and see how we can continue helping to find a solution to this conflict. Let me say that now it's a ceasefire which still is very fragile. We have to make all the efforts, and I appeal to everybody who can help on that direction, to make the ceasefire sustainable, to make the ceasefire lasting. And I would like also to make an appeal to everybody who has responsibility to open the crossing points so that the humanitarian aid and the people who can carry the humanitarian aid can cross and enter into Gaza. Gaza needs help, And I'm happy to hear that what the Minister has said. I hope very much that that will be a reality tomorrow, and the lorries which are necessary to go in, the people which are necessary to accompany that humanitarian aid can enter into Gaza. Let me say also that we will be cooperating non-stop with those who want a solution to this conflict based on the two-state model. This has been our model since a long time back, and I think we have now this point in time to make an effort, a very large effort and very profound effort to make it a reality. I think that is good news, what President Obama has just said, what he has asked Senator Mitchell, ex-Senator Mitchell, to be his envoy to the Middle East. I had the privilege of working with Senator Mitchell in the Mitchell report. I was one of the 4 people who were with him. I think he's going to do a very good job, and he knows, because I had the opportunity to convey that message, that I will be continue working with him day and night is necessary, with the same determination that we did in the year 2000 and the year 2001. Let's see if this time we can come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, and Commissioner Ferrero-Waldner.
Thank you very much. A lot has been said already, but the most important is, one, to make from this fragile ceasefire a sustainable ceasefire, and we are working for that. Second, in reality, to really do everything for the population of Gaza now. We have asked for a quick ceasefire in order to help the population, and now there is a chance for it. So therefore, I do hope that very soon there is a conference for the immediate needs and humanitarian needs of the population. We want to see them having food, water, medication, and of course the most important basic things. Later on, we will see for the reconstruction. But this is now our first aim. Thank you.
Okay, now we have time for a few questions. Lidové noviny over there, Czech newspaper.
Kateřina Šefaříková, Czech newspaper, Lidové noviny. I'm hearing all the opening remarks. Can you actually tell us what have you achieved tonight? What have you achieved tonight?
Well, we achieved doubtless the assurance from Foreign Minister Tizpi Linvni that everything will be done from the Israeli side to have an effective humanitarian aid in the Gaza Strip, whereas, for instance, we have already got now in the night still the news that our mission got the permission to enter the Gaza Strip. The same is valid for the United Nations mission. And we, of course, have to work still, elaborate on certain problems, what could be brought in, and so on. But I think we achieved in the humanitarian task, in the question of opening as many crossings for these aims, we have achieved quite a lot today. Thank you.
I would like to add from that. I would like to add that from our perspective, we achieved not only an understanding about the need to give an answer to the smuggling of weapons to Gaza Strip. Talking about durable and sustainable ceasefire means also full cessation of smuggling of weapons and rearmament of Hamas in the future. And this is something that we are working to work with different member states in the EU in the future. This was part of the understanding before this visit, and during dinner we discussed what are the different ways to do so in order to, one, to help the Egyptians to do so, and the other to give an answer to the routes of smuggling from Iran up to Egypt through different seas and Eastern Africa as well.
Okay, we're on a tight schedule. We've got time for 2 quick questions. Over there.
J'ai une question. Nordin Fridi de la télévision arabe, l'Arabia.
Arab television.
Je vais poser ma question en français
Good
à Madame
question
Linvni.
to Mrs. Linvni.
Il y a suffisamment d'indications que l'armée israélienne aurait commis,
There are
selon
indications
suffisamment
that
de
the
témoignages,
Israeli army
des crimes contre
has
l'humanité et
committed
du manque de
crimes
respect aux droits
against
humanitaires à Gaza.
humanity and
En tant
lack of
qu'officiel
respect for human
israélienne,
rights
est-ce
in
que si
Gaza.
vous êtes un jour demandé par la justice internationale,
If
Êtes-vous prête, madame,
You're
à répondre à
called
la
on
justice
by
internationale?
international judicial authorities. Are you prepared to cooperate with those authorities?
The Israeli army is working according to the international law, and this is according to our values as well. Israel shares with the international community and Europe the same values, and we are working accordingly. The difference between the Israeli soldiers and the terrorists in Hamas is that we are acting against terror, trying to avoid any kind of civil casualties, while these terrorists are looking and aiming and targeting at civilians as part of their ideology. Unfortunately, they are working amongst civilians, and Israel, trying to avoid any kind of civil casualties, declared before the military operation that we are going to enter. We send leaflets from the air. We enter into the media and the radio nets, and in order to say that we are entering in places in which we enter, we called phone calls to houses and places in which we know that they manufacture missiles or there are headquarters of Hamas, in order to avoid civil casualties. But unfortunately, this can happen. Now, a loss of this kind of loss, it's painful, and the loss of a child is something which is unimaginable to anybody, Palestinian, Israeli, Arab, Jew. But I would like the international community to understand that what we are doing is defending our citizens, trying to avoid civil casualties while targeting terror, and I would like to be judged by the international community according to the same values that the international community is working. For example, there is a difference, a huge difference in any legal system which represent the values of each and every state between a murderer and between somebody who kills by mistake. And this is the moral distinction between Hamas, who keeps these civilians as hostage, and between our soldiers. And so please, I know that there are those who are trying to provoke, and there were civil casualties during this operation, but the target and the aim and the goal of this operation was to target Hamas that are acting amongst civil, highly populated areas.
One last question over there.
Question from Austrian Radio and Television. Commissioner Ferrero-Waldner, how is this humanitarian aid going to be distributed without working together with people who are Hamas supporters? Are you going to demand from everybody in Gaza to prove that they are not Hamas, or is the European Union ready to open channels of dialogue with Hamas after this conflict? And the second question to Minister Schwarzenberg, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has asked for those in the Israeli military leadership who are responsible for the attack on the UN compound to be held accountable for this attack. Does the European Union support this demand of the United Nations Secretary General? Thank you.
On the first question, you have heard very clearly what I said. I think we are now going for a conference on the immediate need and also the humanitarian needs. And I think it is very easy to work exactly with the same organizations with whom we have been working until now. This will be particularly UNRWA, this will be the ICRC, these will be maybe important big NGOs, of course, through the channels that we ourselves have been building up. For the future, we will have to think about reconstruction. This will be different, but there, of course, we still have quite some time to go. And of course, it will depend on the Palestinians themselves. We have a Palestinian Authority, and we have to see how they will reconcile. Maybe there is reconciliation, and then we will see further. But this is not yet decided.
I've heard the declaration of the United Nations Secretary General. Well, to tell the truth, we consider Israel a democracy and a state where the rule of law exists. So, of course, in case there would have happened such criminal acts, which always can happen, of course, in any state, in any situation, especially if there's a war, then, of course, I realized that the Israeli prosecutor would take these steps which are necessary, and then that at the court in Israel the case would be decided. Even, as you know, the International Criminal Court is only as last resort if in the country itself there isn't brought an accusation. So, of course, we rely in Israel on the proper working of the court and the prosecutor there.
To add that I'm very proud of the legal system in Israel, which represents same values. Sorry. I would like to add that I'm very proud on the legal system in Israel and our Supreme Court as well. But just to add one thing about, if I may, about Hamas and Israel. Talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and there is a conflict, this is a conflict that needs to be solved through a dialogue between Israel and the legitimate Palestinian government being represented by Abu Mazen as the president and Salam Fayyad as the prime minister. Hamas doesn't represent any kind of legitimate Palestinian aspiration. It represents an ideology of hatred and what they call resistance. So the hope for the Palestinians and Israeli as well lies in the track of the peace process with the legitimate Palestinian government, while we need all of us to work against extremism and against this kind of terror being used by Hamas. So the end of the military operation shouldn't be an agreement between Israel and Hamas. This is not the idea. This is an ongoing war against terror, not against the Palestinians. And the only thing that is needed is an international understanding and coalition against terror, and not something that ends with an agreement with them. And yet there is, as I said before, an open issue, a painful issue for every Israeli, and this is the fact that the Israeli abducted soldier Gilad Shalit is still in captivity, and this is talking about Hamas. This also needs to give to get an answer. The sooner, the better.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Good night.
Bonjour madame, vous en tant que passante, vous savez ce qui se passe ici?
Je suppose que c'est une manifestation dans le cadre du conflit qui s'est déroulé dans la bande de Gaza, mais je n'en sais pas plus parce que je ne fais que passer.
Qu'est-ce que vous en pensez?
C'est une situation tragique et très très compliquée. Je ne parviens pas à me faire une opinion, sauf que j'ai vraiment beaucoup de compassion.
Vous comprenez la colère de ces gens qui manifestent?
Bien sûr, parce que ce sont des événements tragiques qui se sont déroulés là-bas et je peux comprendre, mais en même temps j'espère qu'un jour il y aura la paix et que la haine parviendra à s'estomper, mais ça va être très très difficile.
Ils nous ont arrêtés, c'était quelle station à Malbec, et en fait ils ont été super agressifs avec nous, ils nous ont demandé nos cartes d'identité, mais alors comme si on était des animaux, on a dit qu'on ne comprenait pas pourquoi et qu'ils n'avaient pas le droit, et ils nous ont quand même pris, mais super agressivement, et ils nous ont fait en fait comme un troupeau. Et alors ils laissaient passer tout ce qui n'était pas avec voilé. Madame, vous pouvez passer, mais nous parce qu'on était voilés.
Il y a des gens qui ont subi des agressivités de la part des autorités?
Oui quand même, verbal, hein, mais ils étaient très agressifs franchement.
C'est-à-dire qu'on manifestait devant la Commission européenne, mais on nous a demandé d'aller plus loin, comme ça on sera caché, pas au vu de Madame Linvni, pour faire plaisir à Madame Linvni, pour qu'elle ne soit pas déçue de sa venue accueillante par l'Europe.
Vous dérangez?
S'il vous plaît?
Vous dérangez par votre manifestation?
Ben oui, apparemment, oui, parce qu'on nous a dit cette manifestation est interdite. Vous devez rejoindre votre domicile. Voilà. Et nous avons persisté pour exprimer notre douleur avec le peuple palestinien de Gaza. Et alors on y tient à lui faire savoir à Mme Linvni qu'au lieu d'être reçue avec un accueil, elle devrait être jugée. Plutôt jugée que d'être accueillie comme elle a été.
On est là pour manifester, pour montrer que ce que l'Israël fait, c'est pas bien, qu'il y a des enfants qui sont morts, qu'il y a des civils, des femmes qui n'ont rien fait, et voilà, qui doivent arrêter. Et que la ministre n'a rien à faire ici, qu'elle n'est pas la bienvenue ici, qu'elle retourne chez elle. terroriste!
ضربونا البوليس اول ما جينا لهون معنا بس الصور ضربونا وهانونا بدون اي سبب كنا احنا حضاريين نحن محترمين نحن جايين بس نسجل وقفة احتجاج على هالمجرمي ليفني ضربونا البوليس البلجيكي البوليس الديمقراطي المحترم نحن صحفيين متحضرين ضربونا وهانونا ورمونا الصورة في الارض وكانوا ياخذونا على السجن بدون اي سبب.
Par SMS le message comme quoi il y avait une manifestation de protestation et apparemment on nous a empêchés d'arriver. Les bouches de métro ont été bloquées, donc il y avait des gens qui n'ont pas pu sortir pour venir manifester par ici. Voilà, donc tout simplement je ne peux pas concevoir en tant que citoyenne belge que l'Union européenne reçoive et accueille cette criminelle de guerre. Et ma présence aujourd'hui, c'était justement pour contester la venue de ce Premier ministre assassin. J'aurais aimé que les hommes politiques européens prennent leur courage à deux mains et renvoient la délégation diplomatique israélienne chez elle pour contester justement ces crimes de guerre. On nous parle partout que ce sont des crimes de guerre. On ne peut pas recevoir aujourd'hui cette dame qui a plein de sang sur les mains. Tout simplement, quand on sait que sur les 1300 ou les 1400 morts palestiniennes, plus des 3/4 sont des femmes et des enfants, quand Hamas dit qu'il a perdu que 50 combattants, donc on peut concevoir que plus de 1200 Palestiniens civils ont été assassinés, tout simplement. Et le cynisme de cet État qui vient nous dire que c'est son droit de défendre, moi je viens crier ici que le peuple palestinien doit se battre pour son droit à la vie et à récupérer ses terres et à récupérer ses droits les plus légitimes, le droit de tout être humain de choisir son destin et de vivre sur une terre en toute sécurité.
We are against this atrocity which Israel is committing. Linvni, she is not welcome to Belgium because she is a criminal. She is war criminal. She kills and she destroys and dissolve people and they are genocides. Their hands full of blood. So Linvni, she is not welcome to Belgium and anywhere in Europe, and everywhere we're going to trace them until they go to the court as war criminal. Thank you.
Nous sommes là pour une seule chose, pour rappeler le déni de droit qui existe depuis plus de 60 ans. Nous ne sommes pas là uniquement pour dénoncer un acte de terreur ponctuel. La résistance est un mouvement continu qui s'inscrit dans un esprit. On n'est pas là pour demander à l'Union européenne un peu de faire bonne volonté. Non, on est là pour faire appliquer le droit qui existe depuis 50 ans, n'est-ce pas? C'est ça notre volonté, c'est de faire appliquer le droit qui soit juste et qui soit équitable et qu'on reconnaisse le droit à l'autodétermination de la Palestine et non pas qu'on demande subitement d'arrêter ces massacres. Ces massacres, ils n'en ont cure des nombres de Palestiniens qui vont mourir. C'est pas ça le plus important, c'est d'asseoir une domination politique sur un territoire donné. Et c'est ça qu'il faut arrêter, c'est ça qu'il faut dénoncer. Et il faut commencer par le boycott. Ce boycott a commencé par démanteler l'apartheid en Afrique du Sud. Rappelez-vous, c'est par le boycott que l'apartheid a été démantelé. C'est par la volonté des hommes, par vos consommations, par votre esprit au quotidien que le démantèlement de l'apartheid a eu lieu. Non pas par les bons gestes de politique. Rappelez-vous, on a dit à M. Mandela qu'il était terroriste. Subitement, le visage politique a dit que c'était un homme de paix. Alors Hamas, demain, seront des hommes de paix lorsqu'ils seront conscients que ce sont les seuls avec qui on négocie. C'est avec le Hamas qu'on négocie.
Dieu est grand. Hein? Comment Dieu est grand? C'est moi, le petit qui est shahid. C'est pour ces enfants-là qu'on fait ça. Ah ouais, c'est Dieu est grand.